We all know that romance is one of the most popular genres in the world. But what about those romance tropes? Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, my name is Rob. This is my mom Karen. You're watching Books, Banter, and Beyond, the show that covers all things books and book related. Book adjacent? What it
Right.
sounds better. I don't know.
Covered bantering. Oh, and beyond.
Oh, there you go. There, see? Not to be confused with the other BBB, but that's just a bad joke.
Right.
All right, so a while back we actually talked about the three most popular genres of all time, and romance was actually one of them, and it
Right.
still is. And that was mainly because it kind of just followed a very simple plot line, something people can relate to. Everybody's been in love, everybody's had those situations, right? But deeper into that, we have some popular romance tropes. And my mom pointed out very well to explain what that was, because not a lot of people know. And I learned from her that actually trope is a musical term, right? You said. But in terms of genre, trope is basically a fancy word for theme. So we're going to talk over some romance themes that are usually seen in, let's say, 98% of romance books out there. Now, there's plenty of them, but I went through and picked out three that I think most probably have seen. And I say seen because every time I look at this, I think Hallmark, because damn Hallmark movies just
Right.
can't,
Right.
just stop making the same. I'm just kidding. Great movies. Go do it. All right. So the first one here is probably one of the most popular ones. It's called the second chance trope. And this is really what it sounds like. It's basically two people who might have dated before, may have been married before, happen to run in again via some sort of event, maybe it was through friends, whatever. And slowly but surely, through fun antics that go on, they end up falling back in love again. And I think this is probably the easiest one people like and the easiest one to read, right? Because
Right.
this is probably one that anybody, in the world has probably dealt with before. It's that thing where you might have been with somebody and then, 10 years later, you're like, oh, it's you again, right?
Rob, you do know, your dad and I got divorced and we found each other again, second chance. So we could make a great book. There you go.
Get on that. We'll start writing. We'll sell it, see how much we can make. So this one I think is a really good one just because of that. And it's pretty, there's the different ways you can go. You can kind of have them be a little, enemies at the beginning where they're like,
Right.
oh, I don't like you. But then as it goes,
Right.
or it could be where they still are friends or they're still
Right.
amicable. And
Right.
then as things go on, you do that. So number two, and this one is it's such a funny sounding term, but it's the aloof couple.
Yes.
And basically what it is it's the infuriating to others because they know they're so good together, but the two main characters don't.
Don't. Right.
And it's really funny, right? This is what every comedy movie is, right? Like romantic
Right.
comedy. This is what it
Right.
is, where you have the two main characters who
Right.
are like, I'm just too good to do whatever. And the rest of people are going, God, I just want to slap you in the face.
Right. But it's
And
true. A lot of books are written in like this. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it actually, I think it makes for a better plot because I think this is even more realistic
Right.
because you do have, personalities in real life that are kind of, they're in their own world, they're in their own bubble, right? And they're just like, well, I'm doing this and she's doing this or he, whatever. And everybody around them is like, oh my God.
Get
I
together already. Right.
yeah, just like, please stop making this worse than it already is. But what do you think? Do you think the word aloof is the right term, or do you think it's kind of a funny way? Because to me, it sounds very odd to say aloof
Yeah,
couple,
I don't know if
right?
I call it aloof. I'm not sure what the right word is, but it's. I'm not sure. I don't even know what the right word is. But
I'm
aloof.
just curious because to me, like that's infuriating. That word right there makes me want to be
I
like,
want to say clueless. The
ooh,
clueless
there we go.
couple. They're clueless.
Okay, so we'll change the trope for us to clueless.
Yeah.
If you do look it up, they do call it aloof. And then the last one here, another great one. It's called the fish out of water. And one of the two characters ends up in a place where they're not familiar with, whether it's somebody moving from the city to the country or vice versa. And while they're there, they meet somebody who kind of is the jack of all trades or the Jill of all trades, depending on who
Right.
it
Right.
is. And they start just by showing them around, kind of, being, this is where you get your food, this is where you go do here. And it's also a very fun kind of silly kind of thing, right? Because you get to see somebody who's totally out of their element.
Right.
Like, I would never do this in my life. And you get the other person who's kind of laughing at them a little bit, going, you know,
I just finished a book just exactly like that.
okay,
Rachel Hannah. The book is called The Beach House. She actually has a series of books that literally each book is the next episode or the next part of the journey. And the beginning is this woman who came from the city. She had just gotten divorced and she moved to this little island, into a house that is literally in disrepair. And she meets this jack of all trades guy who's been living on the island since he was born. He's not married, he's single, and he gets her house back into shape. And of course, by the end of the first book, they have found themselves. First, they start as the clueless couple. Right? Everyone around them can see that they're falling in love, but they don't. And then finally, because she's in this new situation, she opens herself up into love. Now she's got it. So maybe some books have multiple tropes. What do you think?
that's actually a good point. I think depending on how detailed and depending on obviously if it's a series versus a single book,
Right,
I think some romance authors do have the capability to blend some together in a way where you're not overdoing it,
right,
but you're giving the reader a couple kind of choose your own adventure styles. You know, you
right,
have the ability of making the clueless couple, you have the ability of kind of the
right,
new town type of deal. That's a good point. I think of the genres, romance is probably the easiest to do that with
right.
because it's very open ended, right? So you can kind of you can make your characters do more than say if they were in maybe a science fiction that is very strictly to the rules of you
Right.
know.
So, Rob, how do you think these themes, these tropes, will typically unfold in a romance novel? And are there similar themes?
So how do they? I think there's various ways to it. I think the easiest way for it to unfold, I think, is to really make it as realistic as you can. So you want to make sure both main characters are relatable. So whether it's the person who is, in a new area, you want to make them real enough where you yourself, let's say you did that, you're like, oh, that's me, I get it. So I think the best way to make the story unfold in a responsible way is to relate to the person.
Right, and I think a common theme, obviously, for especially on the fish out of water, the third thing, a common theme is that actual thing. They leave somewhere to go
Right.
somewhere else, right? And then they meet someone. So it's somewhere, somewhere else, and someone. And I think that would be a common theme in that particular kind of
I think generally that works for, I mean, because as I'm hearing you say, I think it actually works for most romance because I think generally you're always in that situation where even if maybe you didn't move, but you're ending up doing something in the same city that's still kind of weird, you still have that kind of like you're out of water because maybe you never went to that area of your city. Maybe you never knew about the farmers market that happened. So you're right. I think it can kind of blend.
envelop all of them. So, are there challenges in these kind of themes? And so the author, let's say the theme of going from friend to lover. So is that how do they transition that? I mean, if
I mean, I think there's obviously the appeal of okay, I want my character to fall in love with this guy at the end, so that's like their easiest lineage, right, from A to B. I think as far as the challenges go, I think again you want to make sure it's not too over the top. Obviously, you can make it funny, you can make it a little crazy if you want, but I think the hardest part is really making sure that the theme is legitimate.
right,
This is a real story, right? I know this is fiction, but it's a real thing. This is not a fantasy world. This is not.
right, and I'm sure that as the reader, we already again going back to the clueless couple, we already see what's coming, right? So we kind of like already know and like are waiting for that transition to actually happen. And I think the curiosity of that would be how are they going to transition it? We already see it coming down right?
And
We
I think that might be the challenge for the author too, because I think authors realize people are very smart and they've already read multiple
right,
versions. So
right,
the author has to go, okay, my reader knows what's going to happen, knows the ending, what can I do to make it
Exciting, interesting.
exciting and keep them there, but not make it so over the top that they go, no, this is too, like, this is
Right,
ridiculous,
right, right.
and I go back to the Hallmark thing, and that's what makes them so good is they do go over the top. But when it comes to the story, it's definitely, I think the hardest part for the author is, okay, I got to make this real, I got to make this cool and fun, but I got to make sure I kind of keep it, stable as because I don't want the reader going like, nobody would do this. Is not, nobody does this. Like,
Right.
what?
Right, exactly. So, Rob, this is the time in the show that I like to put up uh, a way for people to actually engage with the bookstore. Go to the next chapter, bookstore.shop. You've got all these amazing books. Or if you want to do it right now, take your camera out and start scanning these little QR codes. The one on your far left is the paperbacks and hardbound. So you'll go right into the store, into those kind of books. If you're into comic books, scan the one in the middle. It'll take you to the comic book section. And finally, the merchandise. There are mugs, there are t-shirts, there are all sorts of fun things. So go and check it out. Any last thoughts about romance, Rob?
So we actually have a whole slew of really old school kind of 50s, 60s style. So if you want some really good stuff, go grab your phone, get that hardbound or a paperback. There's a lot of good stuff. And it's funny because people that buy tend to buy a lot of the romance that we have because to this day, it's still like, it's
Right.
popular.
And I tend to buy romance books that have a series behind it.
There you go.
We get to the end and it's easy reading. I mean, fiction, those kind of books are kind of easy reading. You're not
Yes.
taxing yourself, so you tend to get through it faster, I think. And so you want the next one. It's like when you get to the end, you go, oh, it's over. Oh, but there's another one coming. So that's good. All right, guys, we'll see you next time on the next episode of Books, Banter, and Beyond. Goodbye, everyone.